Have you ever wondered why some women can make a man unravel? Not with effort, not with words, but with presence alone. Why a simple glance, a moment of silence, or a quiet withdrawal can shake the masculine ego to its foundation. These women aren't merely beautiful. They are something else entirely, mysterious, untamed, sovereign. They move with an energy that Carl Jung would call the embodiment of the dark feminine, the shadow side of womanhood that both terrifies and awakens the male psyche. Because in truth, what most men crave is not the light. It's the unknown. The feminine that doesn't seek to please, but to reveal. The one who mirrors his unconscious back to him and forces him to confront his own chaos. She doesn't offer safety, she offers truth. And truth, when unfiltered, is the most dangerous kind of seduction. The first dark feminine trait is silence, not the timid silence of suppression, but the sovereign stillness that speaks louder than words. Jung understood that silence is a mirror. When a woman retreats into quiet, the man is left to confront himself. His insecurities echo in that space, his unhealed wounds surface, desperate for validation. The more he talks, the more he reaches, the more her silence unmasks him. It isn't cruelty, it's alchemy. The kind of feminine stillness that exposes the restless, disoriented nature of the unintegrated masculine. And perhaps you've seen it. You go silent, and suddenly he panics. He texts more, calls more, grows agitated by your calm. It's not because he's angry at you. It's because he's losing control over his own projections. You've taken away his favorite mirror, the one he uses to escape himself. Silence is not absence. It is presence distilled into power. Then comes mystery, the second trait, the refusal to be fully known. Jung said that every man carries within him an inner feminine, the anima. When he encounters a woman who embodies that archetype, he projects his deepest longings onto her. The mysterious woman becomes the stage for his soul's unfinished story. She doesn't rush to explain herself. She doesn't make herself obvious. She lets him wonder, and in that wondering, he becomes addicted. Mystery is not manipulation, it's magnetism born from self-possession. In the modern world, where exposure is mistaken for intimacy, mystery is rebellion. A woman who holds something back reminds the masculine that not everything can be conquered, not everything is his to know. Her elusiveness awakens his pursuit instinct, but more profoundly, it awakens his fear. Because to desire something you can't fully possess is to admit your own limits. The third trait is emotional intensity, the raw, unfiltered current of feeling that most men secretly crave but fear to face. The dark feminine doesn't suppress emotion, she channels it. Her anger is sacred. Her sadness is honest. Her passion, unrestrained. Jung believed that repression of emotion leads to shadow, those parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. When a woman embodies her full spectrum, she becomes a living mirror of a man's denied depth. He's drawn to her fire because it promises freedom from his numbness, yet he fears it because it threatens his control. You've seen it before. A man calls a woman too much when he can't handle the reflection of his own emotional poverty. But for the woman who has made peace with her own storm, his judgment is irrelevant. Her emotions are not weapons, they are revelations. They show her what is alive within her, and they show him what he has long buried. The fourth is detachment, the most misunderstood of all. Detachment is not coldness, it is mastery. It is the refusal to make another's validation the source of her peace. A detached woman doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't fear loss. Because she understands that nothing truly meant for her requires force. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole within oneself. Detachment is that wholeness embodied. She can love deeply and still let go. She can care without clinging. And that terrifies a man who measures worth through control. When he realizes that her affection is not a leash but a choice, he feels both admiration and unease. He senses her freedom, and his own dependency. He cannot bind her with emotional games, because she plays none. The woman who can walk away has already won. And then, the fifth, erotic power, the primal magnetism that transcends beauty. This isn't about seduction in the physical sense, it's the energy of life itself. Jung wrote that the feminine is the vessel of transformation, the energy that dissolves the boundaries of the ego. Erotic power is that current. It's the way she moves through the world, unapologetically connected to her body, her intuition, her creative pulse. She's not performing for the gaze, she is the gaze, turned inward. Men lose control not because she gives them something, but because she awakens something dormant within them, the longing to feel alive, to surrender to something greater than logic. Her sensuality is spiritual, and in her presence, the rational masculine meets the infinite. But the dark feminine does not exist to dominate. She exists to awaken. She is not cruelty disguised as strength, but truth wrapped in mystery. The woman who owns her silence, her mystery, her intensity, her detachment, and her erotic power doesn't manipulate men. She liberates them from illusion. Yet liberation often feels like loss to those still enslaved by ego. When a man encounters the dark feminine, something ancient stirs within him, a recognition buried deep in his unconscious. It is not the woman herself who unravels him, but the reflection she awakens inside him. Jung taught that the anima, the inner feminine, is the bridge between man's conscious mind and his soul. Through her, he glimpses eternity, but only if he's willing to face his own shadow. Most men aren't. They crave her light but fear her depth. They want her passion, not her power. They want to taste her freedom without surrendering their control. This is where the paradox begins. The more he tries to own her, the more she slips away. The more he chases, the more elusive she becomes. Not because she's cruel, but because her energy was never meant to be captured. It was meant to be met. The dark feminine demands that a man rise to his own divine capacity. She will not descend to appease the fragile ego. Her allure lies in her unwillingness to betray her essence for comfort. You can see this pattern everywhere, in modern relationships, in emotional games, in the endless cycle of pursuit and withdrawal. The man who cannot face his own emptiness seeks women who will fill it. The woman who cannot face her own vulnerability seeks men who will validate her worth. Both project their shadows onto each other, mistaking attraction for awakening. But the dark feminine is not interested in repeating that cycle. She is the end of illusion. She is what happens when a woman chooses consciousness over compliance. Silence, mystery, intensity, detachment, and erotic power are not tactics. They are states of being that emerge when a woman reclaims her inner authority. She no longer performs for approval, nor softens her truth for safety. In Jungian terms, she has integrated her shadow, the parts of herself once deemed too dark, too emotional, too wild. And because of that, she radiates authenticity. She is no longer split between who she is and who she's told to be. Her wholeness makes her magnetic. A man senses this immediately. He may not understand it consciously, but his body knows. His instincts react. Around her, he feels both desire and danger. His rational mind tells him to stay composed, but his nervous system betrays him. His breath shortens, his gaze lingers, his composure cracks. The ego begins to tremble under the weight of something far older than logic, the call of the archetypal feminine. You might notice how such women disrupt patterns. They can enter a room and shift the energy without speaking. Their presence is calm but commanding, graceful yet grounded. It's not a performance, it's embodiment. The dark feminine carries no need to convince. Her power exists in her being, not in her effort. And men feel it deeply because it reminds them of their own unclaimed sovereignty, their capacity for strength without dominance, passion without possession, love without fear. But to stand before such energy requires maturity. The unhealed man confuses her detachment for disinterest, her silence for punishment, her passion for chaos. He doesn't yet understand that she mirrors his readiness. When he withdraws, she reflects his fear. When he evolves, she meets him at the next level. She doesn't chase him into his avoidance. She holds her ground until he remembers who he is. That is why the dark feminine is so misunderstood. To the fragile ego, she seems heartless. To the awakened, she is holy. Her refusal to nurture weakness is not cruelty, it is clarity. She understands that compassion without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. And in this understanding, she embodies what Jung called individuation, the full realization of the self, where the opposites within, light and dark, love and power, merge into harmony. The woman who has reached this place is not addicted to external validation. She does not seek to be chosen, she chooses. Her energy is not loud but steady, not seeking attention but commanding respect. When she walks away, she does so without drama, because she knows that absence speaks louder than confrontation. She trusts the natural consequence of alignment. What falls away was never meant to stay. And yet, she remains deeply feminine. Her softness is not weakness but grace refined by pain. Her love is not naive but conscious, offered to those capable of receiving it. Her allure lies in her balance. She is both ocean and stone, tenderness wrapped in discipline. She doesn't need to explain her worth because her presence already proves it. For the man who dares to face her truth, she becomes a catalyst. She awakens him to the parts of himself long suppressed, the emotional depth, the intuitive wisdom, the the spiritual hunger. But if he clings to his ego, if he tries to control what he does not understand, she becomes the lesson that breaks him open. Every man who meets such a woman must choose, evolve, or retreat back into illusion. Because in her gaze lies the invitation every man secretly longs for, the chance to meet a woman not of surface, but of soul. Yet it is also the test he fears most, to stand before the mirror of her depth and not flinch. When the dark feminine enters his world, she does not announce herself with noise or need. She arrives like a quiet storm, beautiful, devastating, transformative. At first, he is enchanted. Her presence feels like a drug, soft, intoxicating, unlike anything he has known. She moves with an energy that pulls at his instincts, a rhythm that unsettles the part of him built on order and control. But as time passes, enchantment turns to disquiet. Her calm unnerves him. Her lack of need disarms him. He feels both drawn and undone. Because this woman does not orbit his approval, she commands her own gravity. Jung once said that every man's greatest task is to integrate his anima, the inner feminine that connects him to the realm of feeling, intuition, and soul. The woman who embodies her dark feminine becomes that living symbol. She represents everything he has suppressed: emotion, vulnerability, surrender. At first, he worships her. Then, he resists her. Because the more he falls under her spell, the more he feels his own identity slipping away. She makes him feel, and feeling requires surrender. You can see it in his eyes, the battle between fascination and fear. He cannot dominate her spirit, so he attempts to define it. He calls her unpredictable, distant, dramatic. Yet all she's done is refuse to bend. The modern man, conditioned to believe love must be logical, doesn't yet understand that the feminine's power is not meant to be solved, it's meant to be experienced. And you, if you've ever embodied this energy, know that it can be lonely. Because the world rewards compliance, not consciousness. Men praise sweetness, not sovereignty. But the dark feminine is not here to please. She is here to evolve. She's the archetype of Lilith, of Persephone, of Kali, the woman who walks through her own underworld and returns with her power intact. This power is not about dominance over men, it's about mastery over herself. She knows that attraction born from insecurity is fleeting, but magnetism born from wholeness is eternal. She doesn't compete with other women, because she no longer lives in scarcity. She doesn't beg for love, because she is love in its rawest form, untamed, unfiltered, unapologetic. And men feel this difference. Around her, they cannot perform. The masks fall off. The man who built his identity on conquest feels exposed. The one who measures his worth through control feels powerless. The dark feminine doesn't play by the rules of ego. She dissolves them. Her very presence is a spiritual confrontation. It asks a question few are ready to face. Can you meet me as your true self, without the armor? For the man who can, something miraculous happens. He softens without losing strength. He learns that vulnerability is not weakness, it's the bridge to depth. Through her, he discovers the sacred polarity of love, that the masculine does not lead by dominance but by direction, not by control but by consciousness. He realizes that her darkness was never meant to consume him, it was meant to reveal him. But for those who cannot meet her depth, she becomes a villain in their story. They will call her cold, accuse her of manipulation, label her too much or hard to love. Yet behind their words lies fear. Fear of their own shadow, fear of the woman who mirrors it. Because to love a dark feminine woman is to confront your own emotional illiteracy, to feel the ache of your own unhealed parts. And she knows this. She doesn't chase what collapses in her absence. She doesn't plead for understanding. She has learned that not every man deserves the storm that she is. Her heart is not a battlefield, it is a temple. And only those who have faced their own demons may enter. Jung believed that all transformation begins with confrontation, with facing the shadow, the dark unconscious that holds our denied truths. The dark feminine lives this truth daily. She is not afraid of discomfort. She has walked through heartbreak and silence and loss and emerged radiant. Her beauty is not the kind that fades, it's the kind born from depth. To the world, she might appear distant, but within her burns the quiet fire of knowing. She understands that love, real love, is not about possession, it's about resonance. It's not about needing someone to complete her, but about meeting someone who can match her vibration without dimming her light. And here lies her paradox. She is deeply emotional, yet profoundly detached. She loves fully, yet never clings. She can give her heart without losing her soul. This is what drives men to madness, her ability to feel without falling, to connect without collapsing. She does not live in reaction but in rhythm. Her energy flows where it's received and withdraws where it's resisted. To the awakened man, she becomes a muse, a source of inspiration, challenge, and awakening. To the unawakened, she becomes confusion incarnate. But either way, she changes him. No one walks away from a dark feminine woman untouched. She becomes the dream he can't forget, the lesson he didn't know he needed, the mirror he can no longer escape. And that is her quiet magic. She doesn't demand transformation. She embodies it. Her magic, you see, is not in what she does, but in what she is. She walks as paradox, soft yet immovable, nurturing yet wild, compassionate yet unyielding. To encounter her is to feel both peace and danger in the same breath. Men who have only known surface-level femininity, performative sweetness, compliance dressed as affection, cannot comprehend her. For she carries within her both the womb and the storm, creation and destruction. She is the feminine in its full cycle, the birth of desire, the death of illusion. When she looks at a man, she doesn't just see who he is, she sees what he hides. Jung wrote that the shadow is everything we refuse to acknowledge within ourselves, yet unconsciously project onto others. The dark feminine woman lives as that projection's mirror. She evokes everything the masculine hides: his fear of inadequacy, his longing to surrender, his shame for needing love. Her gaze exposes his disguises. That is why so many men feel both drawn to her and desperate to escape her. She doesn't play the game of validation. They can't use her to avoid themselves. And yet, her power is not cruelty. It is truth. She does not humiliate the man who falters before her. She reveals to him the cost of living half asleep. Through her, he comes face to face with his own depth, or his own emptiness. She teaches him that control is an illusion, that emotional mastery isn't about suppression but integration. She awakens him to the divine balance that exists when masculine and feminine no longer compete but coexist. This is what makes her energy so disruptive in a world ruled by performance. The dark feminine cannot be commodified. She doesn't sell her essence for approval, doesn't dilute her opinions for comfort. She moves through life guided by something deeper than strategy, intuition. And intuition is dangerous to the ego because it cannot be rationalized. It simply knows. You've seen this before. How she walks away from situations that no longer serve her without theatrics, how she ends a conversation with silence instead of argument. That silence is not surrender, it's sovereignty. The more she chooses herself, the more magnetic she becomes. Because true magnetism doesn't chase, it attracts. It doesn't prove, it simply is. And this is where her greatest transformation occurs. There comes a time when the dark feminine no longer defines her power through the effect she has on men, but through the peace she holds within herself. She no longer measures her worth by who stays or who trembles. She has seen that control, whether through charm, intellect, or beauty, is still a form of dependence. True freedom is when her self-worth no longer wavers with another's reaction. Carl Jung believed that when we integrate the shadow, we reclaim the energy once trapped in repression. That's what happens to this woman. Every wound she once tried to hide becomes a portal. Her heartbreak becomes discernment, her disappointment becomes wisdom, her loneliness becomes presence. She learns that the darkness she once feared is not a curse, it's her initiation. And men, even those who can't name it, feel the sacredness of her presence. She carries the quiet knowing of someone who has met her demons and made peace with them. Her aura hums with self-trust. She doesn't demand loyalty, her energy commands it. Not through fear, but through depth. Because when you stand next to someone who truly knows themselves, pretense cannot survive. She becomes the mirror of evolution. The men who cross her path are changed, not always gently, but always permanently. Some rise to meet her, facing their shadows, learning to love with integrity rather than control. Others retreat, calling her too intense, not realizing that intensity is simply the language of truth. Either way, she fulfills her role as the alchemist, turning every encounter into transformation. And you, if you are this woman, must remember, your depth is not a burden. Your emotions are not weakness. Your mystery is not manipulation. You are the reminder that love without self-respect is bondage, and that to be desired is nothing compared to being revered. The more you integrate your shadow, the less you need to prove anything. The dark feminine is not about vengeance or dominance, it's about inner harmony. It is the art of knowing that light and darkness were never enemies. They were always partners in creation. And when she reaches this awareness, she no longer reacts to a man's inconsistency or withdrawal. She doesn't plead, doesn't protest. She simply withdraws her energy, because she understands that silence is not emptiness, it's sacred space. The man who is ready will rise into that space. The one who is not will fade into the noise. This is the moment of her becoming, the shift from emotional chaos to emotional command, from projection to peace. She no longer seeks to be understood by the world. She seeks to understand herself. And from that place, everything changes. The energy that once needed validation becomes creative power. The love that once begged becomes divine choice. The woman who once sought control now moves with grace. Because the truth is this, the dark feminine does not destroy men. She destroys illusions. And once the illusion dies, both are free to see what love could have been if only they had the courage to meet it in truth, freedom. This is where her story deepens into silence, into something beyond the grasp of language. Because the woman who has integrated her shadow does not seek to impress the world anymore. She moves differently now. Her beauty no longer screams, it hums. Her gaze no longer searches, it sees. Her presence is not reactive but rooted, and it is this stillness that undoes men more than her words ever could. In the early stages of her awakening, she believed power came from being desired. That was before she realized desire is fleeting, and control is exhausting. She no longer needs to dominate or seduce to feel alive. The very energy she once used to attract has become the energy she uses to create. It's the shift from performance to embodiment, from chasing love to being love. Jung called this process individuation, the birth of the true self from the ashes of false identities. It's not a single revelation but a slow, sacred burning. Men sense this change. Those who once sought to tame her can no longer find purchase in her silence. Her detachment feels like distance, but in truth, it is depth. She has outgrown the language of validation, outgrown the need to explain her worth. When she walks away, she leaves behind not anger, but reflection. Every man who once held her name in his mouth feels the echo of his own unhealed parts. She becomes his initiation, his reminder that a woman's love cannot save him from himself. It can only illuminate the places he refuses to heal. This is why men who lose her often spiral into obsession. They are not mourning the relationship, they are mourning the mirror. In her absence, the illusion of control collapses. They see, for the first time, the emptiness they kept hidden beneath their pride. But she does not celebrate their downfall. The dark feminine does not feed on destruction. She feeds on truth. She understands that every ending is a form of liberation, his and hers. To cling would be to interfere with destiny. So she lets him fall, lets him learn, lets him rebuild. Her love was never ownership, it was initiation. And you, too, may come to know this, that the highest form of love is not sacrifice but awareness. To love someone without losing yourself is the truest expression of the divine feminine. It is the balance between compassion and clarity, softness and strength. You can hold a man's heart without carrying his wounds. You can nurture him without mothering him. You can inspire him without saving him. That is the art of mature feminine power, the art of remaining whole. Still, there will be moments of ache. Nights when her detachment feels heavy, when the silence she once cherished tastes like solitude. But even then, she knows this too is part of the cycle. Like the moon, she waxes and wanes. The dark feminine does not live in perpetual light. She honors her shadows as sacred. Her melancholy is not weakness, it is memory. It is the part of her that remembers every version she has shed, every illusion she has burned to become free. And men, those who cross her path, will feel that ancient rhythm within her. They'll see it in the way she listens, in the way she moves, in the way she doesn't rush to fill silence. She is not waiting to be chosen. She is observing whether the masculine before her can hold the container of her truth. Because a woman who has mastered her darkness will not settle for half-light. She has tasted the fullness of her own power, and anything less feels like starvation. When she finally meets a man who has faced his own shadow, the dynamic changes. There is no game, no chase. The polarity becomes sacred. He no longer seeks to conquer, he seeks to witness. She no longer withholds, she receives. Together, they move from projection to presence. He leads not from ego, but from grounded awareness. She follows not from submission, but from trust. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And in that transformation, love becomes something higher. It's no longer an emotional transaction, it's a spiritual union. The masculine surrenders his control, the feminine her fear. They dissolve into a dance where neither dominates nor diminishes. There is only awareness, reverence, and mutual becoming. Yet she knows such love is rare. And that's why she no longer waits for it. Her fulfillment comes not from the promise of connection, but from the intimacy she has cultivated with her own soul. Every breath she takes, every choice she makes, is a quiet rebellion against the idea that a woman must be chosen to be worthy. She is the choice. She always was. Her path is not easy, but it is holy. Because in mastering the dark feminine, she has learned the most sacred truth of all, that peace is not found in control or conquest, but in surrender to her rhythm, her intuition, her becoming. She has seen that love does not demand diminishment, it demands awakening. And so she walks forward, no longer chasing, no longer hiding, radiant in her stillness, dangerous in her calm. The world calls her mysterious. Jung would call her whole. There comes a point when the woman of the dark feminine no longer seeks to be understood, only witnessed. Her energy moves beyond explanation, beyond the logic of relationships or the rules of desire. She has transcended the performative game of attraction and stepped fully into the realm of essence. Where once she needed to be seen, now she simply is. The world senses it. Her energy no longer shouts, it resonates. People can feel her from across a room, not because she's trying to be noticed, but because she's entirely present in her body, her boundaries, her being. This is the quiet power of integration. The woman who has faced her shadow no longer projects it onto others. She holds it. She owns it. She transforms it. Jung called this the union of opposites, when consciousness embraces the darkness without fear. It is the alchemical marriage within the psyche, and she has become its living embodiment. The men who once lost control around her will speak her name as though it were a myth. Some will say she ruined them, others will say she awakened them. Both are true. For the dark feminine does not enter a man's life to comfort him. She enters to initiate him, to strip away the masks he hides behind, to dissolve the illusion that love must always be safe. Through her, he learns that intimacy is not softness, it is exposure. And exposure is liberation. But she no longer finds power in being his lesson. That, too, she has outgrown. Her worth is no longer tied to how deeply she affects him, nor to how much he regrets losing her. She has learned that power measured by reaction is still dependence. So she reclaims it, not as dominance, but as serenity. The woman who once lived in emotional extremes now lives in sacred neutrality. Her peace is no longer conditional. Still, she remains infinitely feminine. She has not hardened, she has deepened. Her softness has become intentional. Her tenderness is now a choice, not an instinct. She gives love without losing center. She receives without self-erasure. And because she no longer chases love, love now chases her, not the performative affection of validation, but the reverent love that recognizes itself in her. Her life becomes art, her energy a quiet revolution. The world, conditioned to worship surface and speed, cannot comprehend her stillness. But she knows what she carries, the memory of every version of herself she buried and resurrected. She has burned through ego, illusion, attachment, and emerged not bitter but boundless. The woman who once searched for meaning in others now radiates meaning from within. And this is the essence of the dark feminine in Jungian psychology, not destruction, but integration. She is not the chaos itself, she is the one who learns to dance within it. She is not the void, she is the one who learns to breathe in its darkness and call it home. Her evolution is the story of every woman who has ever been told she is too much, too emotional, too complicated. It is the reclamation of everything once labeled unlovable. When she looks in the mirror now, she does not see the woman who needs fixing. She sees the archetype reborn, the alchemist, the oracle, the warrior, the lover. Every scar has become scripture, every heartbreak, a teacher. What once broke her now builds her. She has become the integration of paradox, the light that honors its darkness, the softness that wields unshakable strength. And for the man who meets her now, the dynamic is different. He cannot manipulate her with silence. She invented silence. He cannot withdraw love to provoke her need. She is complete within herself. He cannot confuse her with contradiction. She has befriended contradiction. She no longer asks, "Will he choose me?" She asks, "Does this honor who I've become?" Because she finally understands, men do not lose control because of her beauty, her words, or her body. They lose control because of her presence. Her energy reminds them of the part of themselves they have forgotten, the instinct, the passion, the soul. And whether they rise to meet it or retreat from it, they are never the same again. This is the sacred paradox. She does not chase power, yet she is power. She does not seek control, yet she commands it. She does not beg for love, yet she inspires it. The very act of knowing herself becomes her highest seduction. She has realized that the true feminine was never about pleasing or performing. It was always about remembering. Remembering her wildness, her softness, her truth. Now she walks in the world with calm fire. Her silence is magnetic. Her absence, unforgettable. Her presence, transforming. She no longer belongs to anyone or anything. She belongs to herself. The dark feminine is not a role, it's a return. A return to instinct, intuition, integrity. It's the remembering that everything she sought was never out there. It was waiting in the depths she once feared to enter. And so, her story ends not in romance, but in reclamation. She no longer seeks to be chosen, because she is already whole. She has become both the question and the answer, both the mystery and the revelation.